to another episode of Public Opinion with your hosts, Pam and Vanetta.
Hello.
Hello, this is season 4, and this is our second episode of season 4. And how are you doing? How's the hair?
The hair is fine. Honestly, if we weren't on this journey publicly, I may have slipped back and got a little perm. My hair does not stay.
Don't go off the wagon now. Don't go off the wagon. And you know what? When we did that tea time about the vaccinate or terminate, we got a lot of comments from that. And people were just all over the place. Some people were just so angry and hostile. And that's kind of like what we're going to be talking about this week. This week, we are going to be talking about cancel culture. And so what people think about that, because sometimes I think when people feel a certain way, they go on such an aggressive attack.
Well, it's passion, but they go, but you're right. It's attack.
It's an attack rather than listening and having a conversation or a dialogue.
Right.
People just want to attack or just cut you out.
The only point of view is theirs.
Is their point of view. And we have to get past that as people. We have to get past that. So we're going to get started and meet our participants for this week. And so first we have Michael Oatman. Michael Oatman is a local playwright and director who was the former playwright in residence at the historic Caramoo House. So we are excited to have him. And then we have Brian Morton. Brian is a relations manager for PNC Bank. And then we're going to have our millennial host back, Taylor Morton. And Taylor Morton is also going to join us and throw in her 2 cents.
Okay.
So let's get started and meet our participants for this week. All right, so welcome, participants. Thank you all so very much for agreeing to be participants on the show this week. And Vanetta and I can't wait to hear what your responses are to the public opinion question of the week. So we're going to get started and see what the public opinion question is. Cancel culture. Is it accountability or fragility? All right, that's an interesting question. It really is, especially given what's been going on recently, especially with Dave Chapelle and with other people. So Mike, I'm gonna let you start us out and answer that question. Go ahead.
I love cancel culture. I say this as somebody who's been canceled. One day, years ago, I made Martin Luther King white in one of my plays. And I got canceled all over places. I stopped working at Caramoo around that time. I lost jobs all over the place. I still can't work in the East Cleveland Theater. I love cancel culture. When people say, cancel culture is a bad thing, what I always say is, for me, the devil always lives in the details. So if you don't like cancel culture, give me the list of people that got canceled that you're sitting at home crying about. Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, who got canceled that you're disturbed about? People who Weinstein, who've raped people. So I think one thing we need to define what canceling is. For me, canceling is if you go to jail or you lose a gig. To me, that's canceling. Somebody being mean to you on the internet is not canceling. That's just how it always has been. People criticizing you is not canceling. But did you lose a gig? Did somebody lock your butt up? Bill Cosby got locked up. R. Kelly got locked up. Weinstein got locked up. That to me is canceling. Other people, what's the dude who was on the Today Show, Matt, whatever his name was, he lost a gig. John Gruden lost $100 million contract. That's canceling. And that kind of canceling, thumbs up. I like it. I think it's good. And I'm the type of person that believes if you have strong opinions, then sign your name to it. I hate people that throw a rock and hide their hand. I see it all the time in our community. I remember that time that, what's her name, Shirley Caesar, was in front of an audience and she was talking about perverted spirit and she was running down all these gays and stuff. And then the second that somebody sent that video out, she had to sign her name to it. Then she got on the TV, oh, my spirit is good. And I just wants to help folks. No, wait a minute. That ain't true. Sign your name to it. If you believe that God thinks that homosexuality is perversion, then sign your name to it. And if you ain't willing to sign your name to it, then don't open your damn mouth. At least that's how I feel.
All right.
We understand.
Yes. And that's what I want. I want to know what your feelings are. Okay, Brian, go ahead. Answer that.
So, I mean, I think that like cancel culture, it's one of two different things. One, people took it where they were meaning well at the time. But then I also kind of feel like it's just kind of gotten out of control where it's more out to get someone than anything else. I mean, you brought up Dave Chapelle as a pure example, but just because that's like the most recent thing that's in the media. And when you think about his situation, you have a group of individuals, and I say a group because it's been like 10 or maybe 15 individuals who are working for Netflix who happen to be transgender that have gotten so much media coverage over the past few days or few weeks in regards to a comedy show. And when you think about comedy, it's normally an outlet for people to kind of get away from reality. And people, I mean, and if you really analyze what he kind of said throughout the whole entire piece, none of it was what was intended to be negative. But I mean, if you take bits and pieces and bits and quotes out of it and you don't read or you don't watch the whole entire thing, then you really, you can form an opinion without even watching it by possibly thinking that Dave Chapelle could be transphobic. So I say that just because I feel like cancel culture, although, like I said, it means well, sometimes, the majority of the time now, it just seems to be a gotcha moment, a statement that somebody may have, taken and misconstrued. And as sad as it is, people don't seem to want to forgive and forget anymore. People want to forget and never forgive. And that's not like how anything is. I mean, if someone may have misspoke nowadays, people are, thrown away, cast aside. Like you said, people may lose a gig. I mean, Dave Chapelle, he's has a new stand-up comedy video that's out right now that he couldn't find anybody to do it, and he got canceled from a few different shows that were going to be coming out. So that's just the most clear example. But then when you think about
may I respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know what? He has 20 seconds left. I give everybody 2 minutes.
Okay.
Additionally answer, and then we have a whole discussion. So I am going to let you respond, but I'm going to let him finish his.
Give me 30 seconds.
I'm going to give him 15 more seconds. All right, go ahead.
To wrap it up, I just think that it has turned more into fragility. People are very fragile with anything that is being said, and no one wants to actually have a clear communication and a clear conversation in regards to everything. They just want to just quickly yell at someone and move on.
All right, now I'm going to give Taylor an opportunity, and then we're going to have a whole time of discussion. And I can't wait for this discussion. All right, go ahead, Taylor. You have 2 minutes.
I agree with everyone, really. I think especially social media has made cancel culture worse. It's like, it's almost everybody on social media is extremely sensitive. So anytime anybody, especially public figures, do anything that they don't like or they disagree with, it's always quick to like cancel that person or like say they're the worst person ever. But I think social media has made it even worse because one, social media is a bunch of people on the internet bullying each other every single day for something. And like with what Brian was saying with the Dave Chapelle mess, people just, I think it's just an issue of just sensitivity. It's like people are quick to jump on board and say they want to cancel somebody because they disagree or because it's not their opinion. And Dave Chapelle, he could say whatever he wants. It's a stand-up. He's a comedian, and nothing really, especially when you're a comedian, nothing should be taken that to heart. And yeah, I just think cancel. I mean, everybody said everything for me. I just think it's dumb, to be honest.
All right. Now let's have a discussion. Mike, you wanted to respond to something that Brian said. Go ahead.
Yeah, first, I'm not going to quote any of Dave Chappelle's haters. By the way, I am perhaps the biggest Dave Chappelle fan in history. I was a fan of his before the show. Gina Yeshere, who helped create Bob Hart Abishola, who's a lesbian comedian, firmly supports Dave Chappelle. And Gina Yeshere said those jokes stung, said they were harsh, they hit her hard. Flame Monroe, who's a trans comedian, Black trans comedian, fully supports Dave Chappelle and even admits that, man, those can't, and what this is what Flame said, she went, sheesh, they hit hard. So I'm going to do a thought experiment for you right now. I want you to imagine that Amy Schumer, popular white female comedian, I want you to imagine that she got on stage and did 20 hard-hitting minutes of Black humor about Black men, about how they don't pay their bills, about how they make up the large part of the prison complex, but the jokes were hilarious and funny. So after she does 20 minutes on her special, the Black Twitter goes crazy and criticizes her, says it's racist, says it's hurtful. And so then Amy Schumer turns around and does 37 more minutes of hard-hitting, bone-crushing humor about the Black community. Now, all of these people run around like, oh, people so sensitive. If Amy Schumer did that, you would burn her house down. Black America would go nuts if somebody outside of our community did that kind of hard-hitting humor. And this is from somebody that loves Dave Chappelle, not just as a comedian, but as a thought leader.
Mike, though, is what particular joke are you referring to, though? And that's
when he says he's standing, when he says he's standing next to a trans person and he reaches over and grabs their meaty dick and then pulls it up and talks about how their private parts are made out of false food, like you would get at a restaurant. When he talks about,
I thought actually that was hilarious. Only because I could see this similarity.
I'm saying that when I drove home with my trans actor who's in my play, she didn't find the humor in it. So I'm glad you found it funny. But you know what? A lot of what people find funny when they make fun of Black folks, it don't hit me as funny.
So the funny thing about it,
like when these white comedians get out here,
what you're saying, but
yeah, when these white comedians make a fool out of us, I don't find a lot of that funny. And what happens is when white comedians do that, the Black community takes them to task. They were bagging on Jimmy Kimmel because he was doing an impression of Karl Malone 20 years ago, and they tried to shut his show down.
But where is the outrage? And okay, I understand that what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, where is the outrage on a whole lot of other stuff that's on Netflix as well? What if the show that they have out even now?
That's called whataboutism. I'm talking about this issue.
I understand.
Whenever you have somebody outside of the community that attacks the community, people don't like it.
I'm talking about the Netflix employees, those people, and that's why I'm talking about Netflix in particular, and how they wanted to have the silent protests and walk up. What's that show out now that's very violent? What?
Squid Game.
Squid Game.
So I'll respond because Mike, I mean, you bring up a good point, but I mean, the end of the day, you could have people inside of the community and people outside of the community that either support things or not. And at the end of the day, that's the great thing about being in America. That's a great thing about being able to have your own thoughts. So, I mean, you had Caitlyn Jenner, for instance, she defended Dave Chappelle. You had the sisters of the person that Dave Chappelle was actually talking about defend him. The closest person, if you actually really watched it, which I know you said you probably did, I mean, he actually went out there and said, I would tell your mother or your father that he was the best woman that I know, because he actually got it and he understood it.
And my point stands, if you reverse that, you would never stand for that if they did that to the Black community.
So
no way you would be on here talking about.
I agree some of the things
You set them on fire. If a white comedian had those kind of jokes about the black comedian, you would shut them down, you would cancel them,
But
and
wait a
black
minute,
Twitter
but
would go
this is
nuts.
the thing though.
But no, you wouldn't, because all of this thing is individual. It comes down to the person. So what one person might find offensive, another person might not. And for me,
In the same-
particularly when you watch
In the
comedy,
Hold on, folks, one second.
yeah, I mean, keep on going, Taylor.
yeah, when you watch comedy, you should go into, first of all, you should go into it knowing that the whole dynamic of what they do is to piss people off and to make people laugh. Or you might get
Or
pissed,
even
you
to
might
make
laugh.
you think. Or even
Yeah.
to make people.
But how you take it, that's on you. So we can't sit here and be like, if that was you and a black, you can't say that because I might find it funny.
So the thing that I actually found very interesting.
At someone's expense.
That's everybody.
absolute truth.
Every community. That's right. It's at somebody's
expense.
And this is the thing. If
But there's a
if
difference
you want
between
to
being
be
for your expense
part of-
inside of the community and out. Name one example of a white comedian that can tell those kind of close to the bone jokes and not have their career end immediately. It was shut down. And let me tell you something else. If Dave Chapelle would have told those jokes about Jews, 20 minutes in one special, 37 minutes in the next, his career would have been. He picked a community that he knew had limited ability to restrict his economic flow. If he would have been talking about Jews for 50 minutes and 2 back-to-back specials, he would have been done, and everybody on this podcast knows that.
So
You
now
would
the
have
thing,
finished.
now I would agree. With you.
Finished.
I would agree.
They wouldn't have tolerated that kind of nonsense against a comedian attacking their community in that way. Transgender folks don't have the problem.
I
The
did not
college would really
find
shut
it
them down.
to be an
That's why he got
attack.
away with it.
I did not find, and I believe if you watched it through the entire thing, he was coming from an empathetic, and this is, I can only go by the way.
Because he said he had a
was
trans
coming-
friend. Whenever white people say I got a black friend,
Okay,
I'm
you're gonna
not for
have to
that.
let me finish talking because one, this is my show. So I am gonna finish saying what I have to say. Now, but what I'm saying though is he was even referring to empathy as being bisexual. It goes both ways, and it does have to go both ways. That's just how empathy is. I believe that he was, and I don't think he was saying, I have a friend, like people say, oh, I got a black friend. That I did not receive it
Sure
like
he
that. I
was.
did not
But even
think it
having
was
a
like
friend
that.
is
That made it okay what he was saying because he had a trans
it's
friend.
strong what
So?
he said. It hurt.
So where I would say in regards to everything, so is cancel culture fragility, or is it like, meant to actually be accountability? So
Yeah.
when you think about the fragility aspect and the accountability aspect of just the cancelness in general, wouldn't you absolutely say that comedy in general is supposed to make you laugh? Comedians are supposed to be edgy, but we have gotten to the point where we're so fragile that we can't even see through it. And to finish my point, does anybody ever even look at people like, look, oh my God, Netflix is doing all this other stuff. I actually kind of found it comforting the fact that Netflix actually has over 20 individuals that are of transgender that they employ. But the sad thing about it is that you have 20 individuals, 30 individuals who could cause an uproar. And from the outside, it seems like a huge, huge deal. But then when you really take a look at it, like what Taylor says in terms of social media and those things, the people who typically have the smallest voices end up getting amplified because we think that like it's such a huge deal because the media is portraying it that way. When you go to Rotten Tomatoes, it's a 96% score from the community that liked that comedy. And only 45% of the critics didn't like it. So that actually just shows you, one, we have a lot of work to do in regards to just like how people think and perceive what comedy might be. But two, that also shows that the media is getting it wrong at the same time too. You have a small group of individuals that are getting very upset about something, and not to marginalize them, but at the same
Every
time,
social
there
thread
are
that I
other
have
different
seen,
things that we should be having our mind on.
every
other than what a
social thread
comedian-
I've seen with the trans community, it didn't go over well. I don't know how that can be debated.
Yeah.
It didn't go over well. So I'm glad that you thought it
But
was
you
a
brought
chuckle
up two
fest.
individuals that didn't like it, and I brought up two individuals of the trans community that did like it. So I mean,
Well, but the
at the end of the
point
day,
is
you're gonna have
that
people,
Dave
black, white,
Chappelle,
trans, whoever, who may or may not like something, even though that they're a part of that community, and that's just what we call life.
apparently it had a bigger effect because he can't get a distributor for his film. So it's not just a few people. There were a lot of people that did not like it, including people who write checks. And I'm simply suggesting, if you wanted to do a special and tell a couple trans jokes, I'm down with that, Dave Chapelle, no problem. What I would suggest though, doing 20 minutes of hard hitting material. And by the way, he wasn't telling knock jokes. Like when he was in this last special in particular, he wasn't just telling jokes. He was giving a worldview. That's his opinion. He was making a statement in the same way he did about George Floyd.
And
That
he-
George Floyd
But
special wasn't
exactly,
just
you
jokes.
just said he was giving his opinion, and
Yeah,
he
he was
can give
making-
his opinion
And he was
about.
making
He was
comparisons
making his
also.
opinion. Like,
I have
if
no
we're gonna talk about, oh, he was
I have no
making his
issue with that.
opinion, why can't he voice however he feels about it?
He can, and then trans people can stand up and say, I will not support companies that support this opinion about my community, and I don't have to reach in my pocket to pay for it. And
But
then
what
those
exactly was his
Let
opinion?
me finish.
And
Let me
I think
finish.
that's the part I
And those companies can
was
say,
so
I
negative.
don't want to employ a guy that puts that kind of stuff out into the community,
But what did
especially
he
when we
put
got.
out there? I do need to know in particular.
Yeah, what is it he
what
put
is
out
it
there
he
that
put out
sent
there
him over the
in
edge?
particular, in what he said? He even went on to talk about the woman Daphne and how she said, I am having a human moment. And he agreed. He said, yes, in that we are all in this together in humanity. And that was the point he was making.
But
I
no,
can repeat
say
what
that.
I've read,
He was
because I'm
also
not
backing
trans.
it up, too. She was saying that you're not understanding me, and he admits that he has a gap in his learning.
No, in that, right. And that's why he was saying
Yeah.
in that moment when she said, I am having a human experience. And
He's
he
the one.
went on to
He's
say,
the one that said that he's transphobic 4 times. He said that, not I.
no,
He
he
said
was,
that 4 times.
the reason he said that was he was referring back to the other special where everyone was saying he was
was.
transphobic. So that's why he was saying it.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, but I'm transphobic. So that's
Yeah.
why he was saying it like that.
I mean, at the end of the day, people are getting up. People are just so sensitive, and people are so sensitive to anything that is said. And people don't take a step back, and we keep on using the comedy for and we're spending so much time on this, but this is the perfect example. He is the perfect example of why we're getting all up in uproar. You want to talk about John Gruden, for instance. John Gruden talks about Black people. No one cared about that. The Black community is even like, oh, well,
He was fired immediately. What are you talking about? People did care about it. He lost $100 million contract.
Behaving like
Yes,
this.
that was.
But I'm saying,
No, I'm saying once
say that he's a
the
good guy, but
people
then
found,
the
Hey,
moment,
I'm just saying once the people found out, once it got out, and then Black folks heard about that, calls were made immediately. He was fired within 2 days
Uh-huh.
of
Oh, he
that
was
set
fired.
of emails.
okay, so
And that's the way it should have been. That's accountability. He got
Right.
fired.
you do a great job of interrupting. But I'm trying to say, my brother, is that
I was simply answering the
that's not
question.
exactly what happened. If you want to get your facts straight, that was not what
I
happened.
do have my facts straight.
So what he said was he was talking about that, and everybody was brushing it to the side. The moment that he actually ended up getting fired was when he actually was quoted in emails talking about people that were from the LGBTQ community, and also talking about women who were supposed to be who were supposed to be referees on the sidelines. That was the moment that he actually ended up getting fired. So then if you want to transpose that to what Dave Chapelle said, it's exactly what he was talking about. The moment that the baby was, he killed some guy, no one gave a shit about that. But once he started talking about the gay community, let's get rid of him. So it's so ironic, the fact that this comedy special came out at the exact same time that John Gruden got fired, because it literally played out the exact same way. You had Mike Tirico up there on NBC Sunday Night Football talking about, oh, he's a great guy. You had Tony Dungy, who's a well-respected Black coach in the NFL. He's a great guy. We should give him a pass. He didn't mean that, talking about that he had Michelin lips. But the moment that it was quoted that it was an email talking about gays, let's get rid of him. He shouldn't be out there. So that is exactly what he was talking about and making emphasis of it and making light of it. But to get back to the point is that is the whole issue of cancel culture, is to get people in uproar, we want to see people fired so bad and just out of our life, but then not really want to have dialogue with that person to see like, okay, well, let's listen to your thought process.
And that's what Dave Chapelle is saying. He's willing to have dialogue. He's willing to, sit down, but he said it's going to be on his terms, and at a place that he chooses, but he's willing to do that. I think that there does need to be accountability in certain situations. And then I think sometimes in some situations, it is fragility. I think it's
resources that make an impact. And that is one of the most powerful things you can have is resources, financial. Okay. And they come together, they're galvanized. The reason why the gay movement has progressed so much further so quickly is because of resources, because income based.
But now when you're talking about the Black trans community, Black trans women are being murdered all over the place and have very little access to resources. Just because you Black, just because you're trans and Black don't mean that all of a sudden you get out of the box of being Black. So like he didn't mention all the trans women who get murdered every year in this country. They don't have any access to any capital to fight.
I agree.
So they are affected by it as well.
Right.
It's racist.
But that was one of the points he made also about when the woman was saying, the trans woman was saying, but you don't know what I've gone through and how many years. And then he's like, well, what about the two Black gay men standing there?
I mean,
we're not at the Olympics of suffering. We all have had suffering.
Exactly.
You're not going to out-suffer my heritage.
Right.
Hence my point.
Suffering.
That's my point, is that we all have suffering and we all are sensitive in the same way. Blacks who sit up and say that the trans community are overly sensitive, we are the most sensitive community that exists when we feel as though we have been transgressed upon. Are you kidding me? There's nobody more sensitive than us. So us pointing the finger at the trans just strikes me as comical.
You can speak for yourself, my brother, but I ain't sensitive when it comes to that. I just understand.
Right. I don't consider it
and that's just true.
To be a sensitivity issue. I believe it's to be a rights issue, a civil rights issue that we have had to fight for. So
and the trans people would say the same thing. That's all I'm saying.
Well, yeah, but we can't.
There's no difference about their issue. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. But we have come to the end.
This has been a really healthy discussion.
It has been.
It really
I
has.
have enjoyed it. But thank you so much. Well, that was certainly a healthy conversation.
I can't say that I got in at all. I mean, you all had a really,
I really liked it because it was, both sides. Right. A lot of times we have people and we're just having a discussion, but this time it was actually a debate. It was right.
I liked him how he stood his ground.
Yes.
And I also like the fact that he was clear. He likes Dave Chapelle.
Yes.
He just didn't like
and he didn't like that.
And
that's what the whole thing is about. You can dislike certain aspects, but that doesn't mean that you have to call for somebody to be canceled. And then there are some situations when maybe people should be canceled.
Right. I didn't love the special, and I know I might be in the minority for that. I felt some of the things he said were stinging, but I don't. He's a comedian,
right?
And comedy has its own license. Yeah. So I really didn't feel like he should be canceled.
Oh yeah, no. I don't think it was his best special at all. And matter of fact, there was some jokes that I didn't like. And matter of fact, I was more offended by the first joke that he told about being molested by the priest or something like. I thought that was offensive.
Very off color.
But overall, though, I like.
He's cerebral. You have to think for a minute and then come back. Right. I mean, you have to digest his humor. He is an observer of human behavior and different things.
Yeah.
So it takes a minute.
Yes, it does. It does. But if you enjoyed this program, if you enjoyed the topic that we discussed, please drop a like or a comment in the comments section and continue to follow us on Facebook at Public Opinion Show, on Instagram and YouTube. So we'll see you next time for another episode of Public Opinion. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.